Here's a question from someone who is beginning their seed raise, and they heard that different VCs have different preferred pitch deck structures, and basically are saying, like, what are the core slides that all VCs want to see? It's a great question. I get asked that all the time. It's something I've had to deal with in my own startups. It really comes down to about 13 slides, give or take, depending on your particular situation. So I will go through each one of these and just ask a question, something that can go through your mind as you're creating these. Looking at hundreds of pitch decks, reading a lot of articles, YouTube, talking to VCs, all these different things, really comes down to these 13 slides. And so what I say is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think sometimes people try to get too creative on the structure itself. Really, you can be creative within your product, your solution, that sort of thing. That's where you can get really clever. Inside of these, it's really about, they have a mental model of the structures that they're looking for, and they don't see those, or they get confused, or just like, where are you? What slide you on? What are we actually talking about here? That's where you lose them as you're presenting to them, as they're reading your pitch deck, or however that situation is in the investment conversation. So we're going to go down through each one of these slides, and it's a question that you can ask yourself as you build that slide. So on the intro slide, what are you building and why? And this is where you have your one sentence summary that hooks them right away. Boom, go right in there. I always say be clear rather than clever. Just tell them what you do. Tell them what you make. In YC applications, it's just like, what are you making? What do you make? So you don't have to be real clever there. The problem slide is, pretty self-explanatory. What is the problem that you're solving? Make sure you're using big, urgent, and painful examples with specific numbers, with specific people. Get them to really connect with the person behind the problem, the person who's having the problem, or the organization that's having the problem. So make sure there's specific examples. Then we have the solution side, which is, how will this problem be solved? A key thing to consider here is the solution is not your product. If I'm Elon Musk and I'm selling Tesla cars, the solution is electric vehicles, right? I just happen to be, as the owner of Tesla, the best position to deliver on that particular solution. That way you're defending the concept solution, not the actual product solution. I'm not defending Tesla. I'm defending electric cars. And now they're now open to hearing about my specific way that I can solve that with my specific brand. The next one, and this is an optional one, which is interesting. It's kind of a meta inside of that solution, that problem or that solution, saying, okay, well, here's one way we could solve it. Or let's say, electric vehicles, we're solving renewable energy. Well, what's the problem with creating electric vehicles? There might be all of these things and problems inside of a solution that helps reinforce what the problem is with this solution. Why other people have tried to solve this and they couldn't, and you can. So you're really trying to solve the problem within the solution. So it's a second level deep, and that creates a lot of confidence. And there's a lot less, you have to be a lot less defensive, saying, look, a lot of you have tried to solve this, and this is how we're going to solve it. Next one is the product demo slide. This is the kind of the peak. This is the very top of your story. Is now it's like, well, show me what you're actually working on. Like, what is the actual thing that's going to solve this? And so make sure you're not losing the story here. I think a lot of times, and I do this, kind of nerd out on the details and going over specific pieces of code and infrastructure. It's like, nobody cares about that. So don't lose the story and make the product demo a part of the continuing story. Here's Jane. She used to do this and this didn't work. And then Jane got her solution, and this is the product, and this is how Jane used it to solve their problem. So do it through the eyes of the person who's actually going to be using this. And then we get into the market slide, basically saying, how big is your market? How much money you can make? And this is where you talk about the total addressable market. You don't have to make this a business degree, MBA sort of detailed analysis in there. It's really about saying, how many of your market is out there and what percentage do you feel like you can capture in that particular market. So let's say it's regional, local grocery stores, and you believe you can get 2% of that, and your conversion rate is 2% or whatever that conversion rate is. And what's their lifetime value, right? So if each one of those grocery stores, if there's there's only 32 in your area and they can each bring in $1 million in revenue, which is, a bit absurd, but let's say it's, that's 32 million. So that would be your total addressable market inside of there. Be specific, pay attention to geographies, pay attention to the specific type. Notice I said regional, local grocery stores. I could even say local organic grocery stores, because the investors are going to want to see that you're narrowing down a particular market, and then we'll grow out from that, instead of saying like, our market is, it's tomatoes and it's every tomato seller in the entire world, right? That's much too big of a market. You want to narrow down on one, so it's believable, and that way then you could say we're going to prove it in this smaller market, and we're going to go out here and our TAM's going to expand as we understand the market better and better. Then you get into your business model slide. This one I think a lot of people can overthink. Use common mental models for quicker orientation. Like if you're ad supported, just say you're ad supported. You don't have to make up some name about, some fancy name for the fact that you run ads. Just say like, this is how we're going to make money. There's lots of companies that make money that way. So just be clear on your business model and the business model metrics and how things break down. You don't need to be super complicated and complex on this slide. Then we have the competition slide. How are you different and 10 times better? This is where you can use a table rather than quadrants. If you've ever seen people do these kind of 4 things over here, and then the logos are kind of interspersed in different places, and it's kind of hard to understand where they sit, rather than just use a simple pricing table. Just be like, look, we're going to compare ourselves across these columns. And that way then you can show, hey, we're much better across multiple different things rather than just 4 things, right? So that's the one thing that has to be clear, that you're not just a little bit better, you're not just a little bit of an improvement, you're a vast improvement. And you want to make sure that you definitely have a competition slide, because the worst thing to happen is that they ask you about your competition and you don't have an answer, or they say, hey, how about this company? And you're like, oh no, I don't even heard of them. Never even heard of them. And this is embarrassing. Then we have the go-to-market slide, which is who are your customers and how you're going to reach them, right? So this is where, going back to the business or the market slide, try not to be the trophy fisher, the fisherman that goes out and tries to get the big trophy fish, land Walmart right out of the gate or Amazon out of the gate as a customer. That you're saying, look, we're going to go here and we're going to start small with these local, regional, organic grocery stores, and we will expand into larger grocery stores, but we're going to reach them by local advertising, basically going into these stores. It's going to be, salespeople going in and actually having conversations. How are you going to do it? What's your your launch strategy with these particular specific markets? Then we have the team slide. The team slide is very important because they're not just investing in the company. A lot of investors are investing in the people behind them. You can have a great idea, but if you don't have the people to execute them, this is the question that's going through their head is this the right team to pull this off? So talk about the deep domain knowledge. This is a chance to be like your grandma or grandpa and just brag about yourself and brag about your team. And anything that's relevant to why you have an unfair advantage with this team, that's what you're looking for. So technical expertise, awards, achievements, exits, any of those things can give more confidence to the investor that this is the right team to pull this off. Then we have the ask, right? We get to how much are you looking for and what type of investment. So we're looking for this amount of money, in a Series A to reach this particular goal. Now notice I tied the money. You tie the money to a particular goal in a specific time frame. So you give us $1 million, right? We will book X amount of business for this to reach X amount of goal in 60 days or 90 days or 6 months or 1 year. That way, then, when you give them an update, you give an investor update, a year, 6 months after they've given you the money, you can say, hey, look, we took this money, we met this goal, and we turned this amount of money into this much value. That's what they're looking for. It's still a story. Don't lose the story here of like, we want $1 million and that's it. It's really about saying we want $1 million to do this particular thing in this amount of time. Then we have the use of funds slide, which is basically, if I give you this check, how are you going to spend this money? And the only specific thing about this is you get to show them where your priorities are. And this could raise some red flags in a lot of ways of like, hey, we're going to spend 99% of our money on marketing and 1% on product development. That could raise a red flag. So make sure, depending on your story and where you are in context, that the investor understands where your priorities are and that, make sure that that's accurate. And, if they have any questions, that might be some way to adjust how you're spending that money. But they have every right to ask because it's their money. So make sure that they understand where your priorities are. Then at the very end, this is why I saved this for the very end. If you start out by talking about your big, hairy, audacious goal, as Jim Collins would say in Good to Great, you're going to be on defensive the entire time because they're going to be rolling their eyes thinking, oh my goodness. Like if you're Travis from Uber and you're pitching an investor and you, right in the beginning, your one set in summaries, you're going to disrupt the entire transportation industry. Now they're like, okay, prove it, right? What are you going to do? How are you going to do this? And now you're defending yourself the whole way. Instead of saying, hey, look, we're Uber and it's one tap to get a ride. It's very clear. There's nothing emotional about that. By the end, with your team, with your solution, with the product, all of these things add up to, wow, they actually can pull off this big, audacious goal. So this is where you save the vision slide for the very end. So hopefully that gave you an overview of these slides. And as you build your next pitch deck, understand that it's not uncreative to stick within these structures. You want to stay within these structures so that they can easily understand where you are, where they are, and you can breeze through this conversation and this presentation. By the end, they have a pretty clear picture of what you do, and that leads to a multiple of other conversations. So hopefully that answered your question.